Hey, this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. Well, when it comes to transitioning from eating a standard American diet or a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet or whatever you're eating to a low-carb way of eating, there's going to be a transition period. And it's amazing to me how many people miss these type of warnings that this isn't, when you make a dietary change, there's going to be interesting things that happen. And they, may get you to quit this diet maybe after a day or two because you feel kind of awful. And you think, my gosh, everybody that's been talking about this diet and how great they feel is just absolutely full of crap because I feel horrible. And you assume that that transition period is the way you're going to feel the rest of your life. That's not true. Here's the three big things that happen to people when they transition from any other type of diet to a low-carb diet. And when I say low-carb diet, I'm talking about reducing your carbohydrates from a more standard 400 to 200 grams of carbohydrates every day to 50 or less. So, and if you're eating primarily carnivore, your carbs are going to be close to zero. And that's going to create some very specific, knowable changes in your body. Number one, you're going to pee a lot because carbohydrates absorb a lot of fluid. And when you don't eat carbohydrates and you deplete the glucose in your body, you're going to reduce a lot of fluid. And removing that fluid, that what I call a liquid inflammation, I think is a good thing. It's going to reduce strain on your kidneys. It is going to make you feel significantly better. It's going to reduce your blood pressure. So, please monitor your blood pressure during this transition time, especially when and it's exciting because you're on the scale, it looks like you're losing a ton of weight, but you're mostly losing a lot of the inflammatory fluids in your system. Good thing, it's not the same thing as fat loss, okay? Don't confuse the two, but the scale is going to move and it's going to move rapidly. That's great. The downside is you're probably not replacing the amount of electrolytes in your system. Predominantly sodium, salt. If you have been eating a standard American diet, you've been getting a lot of sodium in any type of ultra-processed food. I mean, the two biggest additives they're going to throw in there are sugar and salt because their food tastes like crap unless you add it to it. It's going to, if you eat cornflakes without sugar and salt, they are going to taste like metal filings. That's just the reality. They have to add that as a flavor enhancer. So as a result, you've been getting a lot of salt and you've been getting it from your foods and you didn't even realize it. And you've probably received the message and heard it over time that salt is deadly and dangerous. And as a result, you probably aren't going to add it to your food. And you're going to lose all this fluid and it's going to create an electrolyte imbalance. And I guarantee you that if you do not give yourself at least 5 grams of salt every day, particularly during this transition period, you're going to feel like crap. They call it the keto flu. I know it happens because I made that mistake too. And I'd watched enough videos, I should have spotted it, but it just didn't really dawn on me until after I've kind of felt kind of miserable. And I re-looked it up and then said, there it is. There was Dr. Stephen Finney explaining the importance of 5 grams of sodium a day or salt a day. And so I started salting my food to taste and boom, automatically. I mean, the next within hours, I started feeling normal again. So, how do you replace the electrolytes? Just get some Element. It's an unflavored thing, and look at their Element is the letters LMNT. And if you look up their website, they've got the recipe for it, or you can buy it from it already pre-mixed. It's cheap, it's relatively easy, and it will certainly keep you from the keto flu or feeling bad. So do that on day 1 as you're making this transition because you're going to start losing fluids rather rapidly. The next thing that happens to a lot of people is diarrhea. I mean, I'm sorry, there's no ungross way of putting this, but whenever you transition from one way of eating to another, your body carries around 20 pounds of bugs in your gut. And some of them love fermenting vegetable matter. Some of them love chowing down on fats and proteins and stuff like that. And when you're not giving them, and you're not feeding the ones that like carbohydrates and fermenting vegetables and stuff like that, and they're no longer needed, they die off in your gut. And it creates diarrhea. It just does. So, it's going to happen, and it doesn't make, whenever you make a dietary shift, you can go from carnivore to vegetarian and you're going to have diarrhea. And vice versa. So just be aware of it. It's, this too shall pass, as the microbiome readjusts itself and the ones that you no longer need die off. The diarrhea is going to end, but and then it's just part of that losing weight thing, part of the fluid loss, etc. It just is what it is. Any type of dietary change is always going to result to it. If you move from here to Mexico, they call it Montezuma's revenge. You're going to have some time when you transition to a new area with new bacteria. It always happens. So just get ready for it. It's going to be there. Don't get too far away from the toilet. Number 3, and this is the one that really freaks people out a little bit, particularly athletes. When you shift from being primarily a glucose burner to a ketone burner with a low-carb body, keep in mind where the most of your glucose is stored. The excess glucose that you consume is being stored in your muscles. And you've probably, if you're eating standard American diet and you're eating lots of carbs, you've got lots of glucose in your muscles, and it will last you through a long exercise period. This is what used to be called the wall when marathon runners, that they would get about 20 miles and all of a sudden their glucose stores would run out and boom, they'd hit the wall. And that's why they started doing carb loading, and they eat those gel packs and stuff like that if you're primarily a glucose burner. Now, what's really cool about being a fat burner who's running on ketones is you don't have to do that. You're carrying around enough energy in the form of fat on your body for the average person to be able to walk from Florida to New York without ever having to eat. You've got that much energy stored on you at any given time. So don't worry about the amount of energy you've got. The problem is the conversion. And this is what happened to me, because at that time I was training for a 5K run, and I noticed that I felt great almost all day long after I started adding the electrolytes. But when I would work out, I would run out of energy much faster than I did before. And I thought, my gosh, this diet doesn't work. It doesn't give you the energy you need to do long workouts. And then I found out about this transition period that takes anywhere from a few weeks to a couple of months, depending on who you are. Some people, it only takes a couple of weeks to do it, but it takes a little bit of time for your body, for your liver to kind of be retrained to be able to create ketones very rapidly from fat. But once you do that, keep in mind, your body is going to go into a state of ketosis if you don't eat for a couple of days. So if you just, whatever reason, you can't eat for a couple of days, you're going to start creating ketones, and your body's going to run on that, and you probably wouldn't even notice it unless you're working out. And when you work out and you've not made that transition after a couple of months, you're going to notice you're going to have less energy on heavy long-term stuff because you're wiping out your glucose stores pretty rapidly. Your body is going to make some glucose even if you're eating zero carb. But it's not going to be as much, and it's not going to be quite as efficient for a little while. So build in some time. Realize that it is going to take some transition time to go from being a traditional diet, carbohydrate burner to a fat burner who's running on ketones and utilizing body fat, but your body will get very efficient at it within a few weeks or a couple of months. And your workouts are actually going to be better. And the cool thing about it is you don't have to snack. You don't have to grab a snack before you go work out like you do now, because I used to do that. I know that when I'd go for a run or something like that, I'd always want to eat something, some carbohydrates, about an hour or so I'd have energy to be able to complete the workout. Well, I don't have to do that anymore because I'm running off of my body fat, and it stays pretty darn level and consistent all the time. I can go for long hikes and not have to worry about taking snacks with me, because I know my body's going to run efficiently on the food. I'm not going to starve, and I'm not going to feel a loss of energy in the course of this thing except by natural exertion. So those are the three big things. You're going to need to replace the electrolytes because you're going to be losing a lot of inflammatory fluids initially. I mean, watching that scale go down is exciting, but just remember what it is. It's not fat. It's that unnecessary fluid in your body. And you're going to probably have a case of diarrhea because certain bugs are going to die and certain bugs are going to grow. And it's going to just take a little while for your digestive system to adjust to a new way of eating. And it takes you a little while for your liver to get caught up and to start creating ketones at a rapid rate to energize your workouts. These are the three big things that are going to cause a lot of people to give up way too early on eating a low-carb diet. It is what it is. Don't fall for it. Once you make that transition, and we'll talk more about the other hard things in the transition, which is getting over your addiction to sugar, which is a very separate issue. But anyway, this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. I try to put out a couple messages each week. If you like this message, if you find value in it, do me a favor, hit like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm that, hey, this is kind of worthy content that other people should watch, and it'll help spread the message to even more folks. And I appreciate it, and I appreciate your support in this channel, and I will talk to you again soon.